I started a garden. If I look into the future, 3 or 4 years from now, I see that having your own food or source of food is going to be the biggest commodity because we no longer will be relying on grocery stores and we'll no longer be relying on outside resources for our own health. And so I simply just wanted to get ahead of the curve and start now. And mind you, I do own my property here in Atlanta, so me building this garden out isn't something that I plan on taking away or that I have to leave in 12 months. This is here to stay, and I'm just learning. I'm at the very beginning stages of this garden, and honestly, it's brought in me so much peace and happiness, and it's been really good for my mental health. And I just want to talk a little bit about how I even got to this point. A few months ago, I did ayahuasca and I made a video on my channel about what that experience was like. However, it was during my trip with Mama Aya that I realized how connected I was to the planet and to the earth, and I realized how connected I was to nature all around me, and how not only do I have the ability to essentially control my environment, also the weather and all these other things. It gets super deep and I won't go into detail there, but I saw all these visions, and the most important vision for me was touching the ground with my hands. This is a vision that I'm having while I was on the ayahuasca, and I had a vision of touching the ground and I saw a plant emerge from the ground out of the dirt, and like there was this huge spark of light in my hand. And so, I had had previous thoughts of wanting to explore my green thumb and wanting to explore with plants and that sort of thing, but I didn't know how strong the connection was until that moment. And for me, it was one of the most vivid memories that I had of my trip with Mama Aya. And not only did I have that vision, I also saw glimpses of like past lives where I was a medicine woman, where I was the one, working with plant medicine and using herbs to heal many, many people. And this has circled back around into my current lifetime where I have a lot of passions related to, the earth and nature and plants and how we can use food as medicine. So much so to the point where I will be studying this thoroughly over the next couple of years of my life. So I hope to document that journey here on my channel as well. But one of the other benefits of me starting this garden was, all the things that it's done for my mental health. Like I mentioned, just being in the garden and working with the plants and the soil and really getting my hands dirty. And sometimes when I'm in there, I don't even need to have any music playing or anything. Like I'm just so in the zone. I'm so immersed in the sounds of nature. I'm so immersed in the plant and communicating with the plant to make sure it has everything that it needs. Again, here we can see how the bugs are kind of eating at my cucumbers, but these are looking a lot better in comparison to what they were looking like a few days ago. And I have that big guy right there trying to come through. Some of them are still inching in. This one's been this size for quite a few days, so I think it's just not getting enough nutrients right now. So we're gonna cut a few more of the dead leaves off so that we can make sure that this has room to thrive. But wow, look at that. Oh my goodness. I have two more right there that I didn't even see. Wow. Starting a garden is not easy. It's not easy, but for me, it's a learning process, a beautiful one at that, because, for anyone who's interested in gardening and you're deciding to go the organic route, meaning you're not using any sort of pesticides or anything that's going to harm the plant or anything that's unnatural to the plant's growth, it's not going to be easy, but I'm learning, and this is my first go around. And the idea that I had for the garden is to basically grow organically as much as I can for as long as I can. That's going to be the goal. I want it to grow wild. I want the plants to do what they do, kind of like this watermelon here. Have a little watermelon coming in. But basically, I started this garden a few months ago, and already we have a few things coming up. But what I'm going to have to be doing today is pruning because a lot of my plants are dying. And mind you, this is my first grow session, and so, or my first season, I should say. So this is my first season, and I've learned so much. I've learned that some plants like more space, like people. Some plants need more light, sunlight. Some plants need a lot more water than others. And if you live in Georgia or if you know anything about Georgia, it's been raining nonstop for the past 3 weeks. So I decided to give them a little break. But today I just need to clean up my garden space because it's been raining for so long. I haven't been able to do that. And I'm going to prune some leaves as well. So we're going to cut off some dead leaves. But I just wanted to give that disclaimer that although this is such a beautiful process, it doesn't come without its challenges. And I think the biggest challenge is just communicating with the plants and knowing what they need in order to thrive. Growing our own food is essential to our future health and well-being because who knows how long this will continue, where we go to the grocery store and all of a sudden they're out of something for weeks, and then all of a sudden we realize how quickly it moves out of our reality. Let me give you an example. My local grocery store used to have soursop, and I wouldn't call it a grocery store, more like a farmer's market. But now if you go, you won't find soursop anywhere, at least anywhere in the US that I've been, unless it's some sort of, very, very hyper local mom and pop type of shop. But if you go to like a farmer's market, those sort of healing produce that you would find in nature, and you used to be able to find in most farmers markets and grocery stores, you won't find anymore. But this is going deeper. Sometimes you'll go to a farmer's market and they may not have celery or they may not have carrots, and it's just kind of like what's happening with our produce. Either it's not getting to us the way that it used to. Not to mention that a lot of this stuff has zero nutrients in it, so it's really all just for show. And so I think growing our own food is really, really important from the aspect of being able to control your own food sources, but then also being able to grow food that has no pesticides, has no GMOs, etc. And this obviously is important in terms of where you get your seeds from, but at least you have more control over what you're consuming and putting into your body. One thing I want to start getting more into is planting herbs, and I want to start planting medicinal herbs at that. Herbs that I can just go out and grab from my garden for any reason whatsoever, and help me with any sort of ailments I might have. So now I want to talk about some synchronicities that I experienced to allow this garden to come into my reality. The first thing that happened was I just had a vision that I wanted a garden, and I didn't know where exactly because, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I travel a lot. But I do have property in Atlanta where I come home to, so it's essentially my home base. And so I started with the idea that I wanted something, and then I figured out where I wanted to put it, location. And then I just started putting it out into the ethers, the universe, whatever you want to call it. The idea that I wanted to build something. I didn't want to just start building or growing in ground, especially because I didn't really have any idea what I was doing. But I had this idea that I wanted to build a pretty garden space so that I can differentiate it from the rest of my land and start small, essentially. The next thing that happened was, okay, I have this idea. I know what I want it to look like, so I can envision it. And I know where I want to put it, so I have a physical location. Next, I need to figure out how to build it, and in comes my neighbor. I've been living across this person for about 2 years now, and up until recently, we didn't really start to become close, but once we did become closer and I started to learn that he had already started growing in his own backyard, he has a couple of greenhouses there, a lot of beds in his garden as well. I was like, wow, how crazy is it that my neighbor is already doing exactly what I want to be doing with my land? And on top of that, he was looking for some work, and I was out of the country at the time. I had to go out of the country for quite some time. So we started the project while I was out of the country and just kind of prepping the land. So placing down the tarps and that sort of thing. And then when I came back, we went to work. We went to Home Depot. We started building. We started putting things together, mapping things out, nail and screw, that sort of thing, and painting and all that good stuff. And boom, 3 months later, I have a fully built garden with several garden beds. And I'm just amazed at the fact that all of these elements were put in front of me in order for this to happen. And it all started with an idea that I had. Obviously, that was awakened within me after visiting Mama Aya. So, a little bit about the garden. It's located in Atlanta, Georgia, as I mentioned. So Georgia is considered to be Zone 8A. If you are familiar with those sort of things when it comes to farming, different zones are related to different parts of the country because of weather. And so in Georgia, it gets pretty hot, and I believe it goes up to 10. So we're on 8A. I am currently in the Zone 8A, and how I set everything up was I knew I wanted a very clean layout, so we built the garden space so that people can walk in and not be bombarded by the plants. And I wanted the plants to have their own little section so that when I'm pruning or when I'm harvesting or when I'm watering, I can just go in between each bed and have a very comfortable space for walking. How much everything costs. So I was shocked that we were able to basically build this garden space with about $600 worth of material from Home Depot. I did have to make a few trips back and forth because we altered the size of the garden quite a few times. So I did have to make a couple trips, but all in all, I want to say the actual materials to build the garden space was only about $600, and most of that went to soil and wood. So just keep that in mind if you're looking to start a garden or whatever the case is. And mind you, you do not have to start this big. I'm a type of person who is like, we're going to go big or we're going to go home. Next part of the cost aspect of building my garden was the labor. Obviously, I mentioned my neighbor was looking for work, and I was more than willing to pay him because I obviously knew this is something that he's done plenty of times before, and his garden looks amazing, and I wanted mine to look very similar. So I had no problem offering him work in order to do that. And I think it was one of the most beautiful mutually beneficial relationships that you can have with the neighbor in that sense. And so all in all, my garden didn't take much to build. I did pay my neighbor very well, so he's very happy about that. And he also is an integral part of my garden because he has the knowledge that I'm still learning, and so we're able to still continuously work together in that sense of him showing me how things work and helping me identify if there are any issues with my plants, etc. What I'm growing in my garden. This is the $1 million question. I just wanted to start with experimentation. As I mentioned, I do have experience working on a farm, and I noticed that we kind of stuck to very similar crops, and these crops were very easy to grow. So we would, plant them in the ground, 3 months later, ready to harvest. And this was a continuous thing. But I know being on a garden, I had a much smaller area, and I don't typically eat what we were going to grow. I don't typically eat all of the things that we grow on the farm. So I really wanted to focus in on things that I love eating. And then experimenting with them. So I have a lot of cucumbers, zucchini, watermelon, cantaloupe. What else do we have out there? We have corn. The corn is not doing too well this season. It's just way too hot in Georgia, so they're burning before they can even really sprout. I have about one or two that are coming in pretty strong. I'm also growing some sweet potato, some squash, some tomatoes and cherry tomatoes, and several different variations of peppers. I also wanted to get started on some herbs, so I'm growing some moringa trees and some lemon trees and some cilantro. And before I leave the country again, I will be putting some more herbs in the ground, and my neighbor will be helping me out with those as well. So I'm really excited to come back because when I come back for my next trip, I should be able to harvest. I'm also growing some pumpkins, so hopefully I'll have a few just in time for the holiday season. Once I expand the garden and I've gotten through the experimentation phase, my plan is to grow enough produce to share with the community. I want people to be able to come to the garden and purchase produce for less than what they would at a grocery store, but also knowing that it's more nutritious, it's local, and the fact that they can use those seeds that they've purchased within the produce to then start their own garden. I will continue to be traveling, but my goal is to travel to other gardens around the world and help out people wherever I can to start their own garden. Just, think of it as like guerrilla gardening. That's what I plan on doing. I just love being outside, getting my hands dirty, and watching the fruits of our labor flourish right in front of our eyes. And so this won't be the last time you hear about gardening from me, because it's such an integral part of the bigger picture, of my purpose, etc. And I truly want to share that with as many people as possible. So that is what's next. You will be seeing more videos, more vlogs about plants. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about my journey of getting started, or any questions in general about anything I've mentioned in the video, feel free to comment down below, and I will see you on the next one.